In the chaos and unpredictability of nature, the seasons and their qualities provide a little map to navigate each year. And so when I first came across the Japanese 72 microseasons, I was fascinated to learn more. There wasn't much information available in English, so it took a few years to gather and decode the full set. But then I began to use it as a starting point to learn more about Japan, and from there apply it to what was going on in my own local environment halfway around the world. The project with Betsy was a perfect step forward, exploring the markers through poetry and pottery, a connection we found despite living over 4,000 miles apart and having never met. We recorded the Japanese seasonal markers along with our own thoughts and visualization. The haiku prompts were transformed into a tiny plate every 5 days throughout 1 year. We have now turned our Instagram collaboration into a book.
I think that is so wonderful. I am so glad that we are here today to launch this. We are an action research project, which means we're discovering things that have not been discovered previously. And one of the discoveries I was thrilled to make was this book, because I have been lucky through my wife to know Betsy Williams for a number of years. And our home, when you've been to our home, you've seen Betsy Williams work in many places. Betsy, could you explain a little bit about how this began and how you and Joanna collaborated? Because this is the best example I know of collaboration and making local and global connections, which are things that we care very much about.
I joined Instagram in 2015, I think, and became friends with Joanna through Instagram. And one of my favorite aspects of this project is how it evolved naturally. It unfolded without, I think, either of us thinking of what it might become. It was a natural progression. Joanna and I both have a keen interest in Japanese culture. So through her, I learned of the microseasons. And we began going back and forth sort of informally until it turned into a project that we focused on over the course of a year.
It's wonderful because of one of the things in the very front of the book you say, and this is what grabbed me, was I want people to go outside and I want them to spend a moment and connect with what's going on with them around nature. And the other thing that was so powerful that you said was, and this isn't something you have to do all the time. You do it once, you put it down, you come back to it, you do it again. And after enough time, eventually you will have seen everything going around. How does that connection, what led you to want to make that connection and that suggestion for the readers of your book?
I'm not sure I can answer that, Ferdy, except to say I live on top of a mountain. My nearest neighbor is maybe within screaming distance if the wind is right. So I spend a lot more time outside with trees and I work in clay, so it's just that is my world. It's not an urban environment. It's not even a suburban environment. It's a world in which I've found being outside and noticing things can settle your mind in a way that nothing else can. And so the pandemic, especially with the pandemic, in the early days, we didn't know, how do you catch COVID? How is it transmitted? Are you supposed to sanitize your groceries or spritz your mail, or all of that stuff. And at that, I'm sorry for the sunlight, but at that point the I'll scrooge down. At that point, the only safe place to be seemed like it was outside. And now that we know more about air particles and all of that, it still seems like the only safe place to be is outside. And there's some sort of metaphor of our modern day existence. It's changing architecture, it's changing the way we go through the day. So that's where that came from.
It's beautiful. And I know there are other things that your connection with the world, and I'm just going to drop one little thing that also has inspired me. You have gone outside and you have been investigating different types of native clay. I think 142 types of clay and glazes and things that you have discovered just walking around, and now you're beginning to use those as part of your process. So in terms of making a local connection, your local connection of what you see outside your door and how you're doing that is extraordinary. But then in terms of the global connection, that's where I want to now turn to Joanna, because this is such a wonderful story. We know that the root cause of most of the problems that we're experiencing these days is from the loss of connection. And here the two of you have created this great connection. And this is only the second time you've ever seen each other, from what I understand, because you were doing everything, as we call it, asynchronously, like Celia has to do. You didn't do it in real time. You did it in the time that you were able to do it. So please, Joanna, let people know a little about you and how you got started in this.
I think it helps that both Betsy and I are deep introverts, because that helps with introverts like communicating in short bursts and not feeling like there's a pressure to answer immediately or to give a big background. So I could come at her with something very random and short, and she'd completely accept that and work with it, and it had no explanation. Or, I mean, I could come across as completely crazy, but she it works very well for introverts who find people quite exhausting and spend a lot of time in nature, so are comfortable with nature. So I think we were on the same wavelength when we first began communicating with each other via Instagram. And I had moved from London. I've been working in the city of London for 15 years and moved to the countryside, even though I'd grown up in the countryside, but was quite disconnected. And we moved to a place we could afford. So it was somewhere I didn't know, and I wasn't very connected to it. So finding about the Microseasons, the Japanese version, I was using it to connect to where I lived, because I knew nothing about where I lived. I knew nothing about the things that it flooded once a year. And in fact, I wasn't really going out. I wasn't really finding out about it, because I think I was just paralyzed into, I'm suddenly living in the countryside from the city. And the Microseasons helped me to find out about where I lived at the same time as learning about Japan. And it was, at first I made haiku just on Betsy's tiny plates. She'd post a tiny plate picture, which often are nearly always of nature, but sometimes of man-made things too. They just would spring a word into my head, and I'd just write a haiku as the comment under her post. And that's where it began. And then it gradually became more and more. I think people were expecting a haiku and a plate at that point. And then Betsy suggested, well, why don't we just go for the whole year? I think I wouldn't have committed to the whole year without Betsy at all. I think I needed her to say, come on, we'll do it together. I probably wouldn't have done it on my own. And then I've gone on from then to do it several times on my own with notebooks and learn more. And I definitely know more about where I live now, and the customs and the people and the little sayings people have and the way people speak, just funny little things that you get locally. And I wouldn't have that without this project and the micro seasons at all.
Well, that's beautiful. And today's is Spring Breeze Melts the Ice. And we know that the climate that you were originally describing was in Japan, and that the people there looked at it very carefully every 5 days. And we know that it's different everywhere else. Here in New Mexico, the reason we're not seeing very many students today is that yesterday we had a major cold break and snow come in, and it was -4 Fahrenheit this morning, and we've had snow and ice, and many of the schools are closed. And so it was very chancy of whether we would get any students to come on. But I see a progression from you started with something small, you worked on it, the idea expanded out, and then you realized, wait a minute, this is bigger than I can do by myself. And I think that is the key to this entire project. And that's why Renee Beth is here. Renee Beth has designed the community of practice where all of the discussions for each of these events is going to take place. And it's intergenerational. Our chief technology officer is 18 years old. And yesterday, in preparation to this meeting, he built a wonderful area that is going to allow people to contribute to these projects quite effortlessly. And the idea is when they come to this first webinar, people will decide, oh, that's interesting, that's cool. Well, if they decide they want to do it, they get invited to the community of practice, and then they can participate. And if they decide that they're going to share an example like the one I'll show you later, or if we do get our student back from Tucumcari, we'll share some of that work. If they say, I'm going to make one to share, then I give them a copy of the book. And so every person who's in this project is going to have a physical copy of the book that they can look at all the time, but the digital copy of the book is already on the data casting receivers. So people who don't have good internet will be able to participate in this asynchronously. And what we're doing is we want to hear their voices first, so they get a week's head start to share their things with everybody else who can do Zoom like we are right now. So Renee Beth, what do you think as the engineer, as the architect of these learning environments, what excites you about this project? And give a little bit of background so that Betsy and Joanna can know who you are too.
Well, it's a delight to meet you guys. I saw the book when I visited. I'm in Portland, Oregon, the Northwest, and it's a little bit different. It's really foggy today. We did have snow a few weeks ago, but snow's on the mountain and the ocean's, just 2 hours away, hour and a half away. And I just came back from the ocean yesterday. So I wrote a book in 2019. It's called Living the Potential, Engaging the Wisdom of Our Youth to Save the World. And what it is what youth have to teach us. And as you know, youth are playful in nature. And that's how they grow up until they're, told to sit in a classroom and ask for permission to move, which is not healthy, And as you know, with the pandemic and so forth, it's really illuminated issues. So in my work, I've been creating facilitators, and we have an organic learning model platform, which is all about nature, which is you got to trust the seeds. What are your seeds that you're bringing, and who are you, and how do you bring that? And then how do we cultivate our learning in fertile learning environments based on how we are unfolding? And I love the way you explained how your book came to be. It emerged through the relationship. Mm-hmm. And a shared interest. And it was natural. I think Betsy, you said it was just a natural unfolding. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned over the years is about natural learning and how do we unfold our learning based on our curiosity and desire. So it's trusting, it's cultivating, it's then cross-pollinating, and then it's regenerative systems. And then there's a higher technology awareness that could come in when we can share what we're learning. And that's when I met Ferdy, because he came to one of the intergenerational conversations. I'm actually having one tomorrow. It's called the Podluck, where we're all in this pod together. intergenerationally, and the youth are talking about what they'd like to see in the world and how they can be more engaged sooner rather than later. So in the community of practice, working with your book and the microseasons, it's kind of like we're accomplishing the awareness, like learning is happening everywhere and nature is our teacher. Are we present to it? Are we observing it? How are we connecting to that? Personally, in our own experience, that's nature, but we're part of nature. We're not separate from nature. So I'm hopeful in the community of practice as we begin to share this such a divinely guided opportunity to have your book be one of the key aspects of the microseasons and the conversations, because it awakens people to go, I know something and it's my experience and I get to share it with other people and they're sharing their experience. And then there's a greater awareness that we are in this together. And by the way, this problem we're trying to solve is, how does connectivity build community? But it's not just the technology part, it's the relationship. So what I'm seeing and so grateful for is the relationship to myself that I'm learning through your work, the relationship I'm learning with others that are in our community, and then what are we learning as a whole in terms of how do we become more awake on this planet Earth before we just, hopefully we awaken before we destroy Mother Gaia here. Yeah. So that's why I'm here. Grateful to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Renee Beth. I'm going to, before I turn to Creighton, I want to share with the folks watching the recording what it is that Creighton's students got to see. So I'm going to share again right here. This is the way the book looks on the data casting receiver. That's actually my copy of the book that I got from Betsy sitting on top of my laptop. And on the receiver, they can go page by page through the book. So that's the description where Betsy was talking about what she was doing. There's the description where Joanna was talking about what she was doing. Here I'm explaining a little bit about the cycles of time and how we're using that in this project. We don't have to read that now, but here's our digital copy of the book. So we have all 18 of the microseasons that are in spring. There are 4 sets of 18, which is how we get to 72. And the one we're looking at today is this plate. It says February 4th. So when you actually get the book, you're going to know this is the microseason, the number of the microseason we're in. There's an explanation and a key that explains the system of the microseasons. But basically, oops, got to go back. They change every few seconds. So there is the haiku. And there is the plate, and this beautiful balance between nonverbal, between the image and between the poetry is something that we think will make this accessible to students. And so that's why I am delighted to introduce everyone now to Creighton Eddington, who was the first teacher who was brave enough to pick up this idea and run with it. Creighton, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and what your experience was like bringing this to students?
Sure. Again, I'm Creighton Eddington. I've been a math and science teacher predominantly for the last 25 years, although I am endorsed in other topics. I do project-based learning is my main thing that I do, particularly STEM competitions. But over the years, I found out that my best robotics students are actually the best artists as well. And because a lot of these competitions, because they're open-ended for solutions, you need a significant amount of creativity and innovation. So with that, I really work on the art part of developing things, projects and topics with my students. I had the opportunity to go to Tucumcari High School to work with the students there. A fellow teacher of my associate of mine, Tommy Evans, him and I have known each other for a long time. For a week, my school went remote, so I was able to teach in a classroom in the mornings when I needed that. And then I worked with his students in the afternoons mostly. And we started with this project. When Ferdy first presented it to me, I usually try to find at least three different connections that make something worth doing for me. The art part of this was one of those parts, just to expose the kids to this. The other part for me was with this data casting project, we were going to have students submitting works, both through video and photos and written. So this was a good way of just testing which students were really going to be engaged in this. And the third thing I added to this was just a quick lesson on framing photos. Talked about the rules of third and symmetry. And so the students, after they saw the book, we talked about what a haiku was, the intent of it. And I didn't make the stipulation for their assignment that it had to be a haiku, and it didn't necessarily have to be specifically what the book was about, because I told them I wanted to allow as much flexibility and freedom as possible. And I gave them the assignment, and if I'm going to share my screen here, I tried to do this as a PowerPoint, but my computer will crash if I do it. So I did it as a PDF. So can you see where it starts off?
Yes, beautiful.
All right. So again, I went there in January, kind of like toward the later part of January. And just so you have a little background about Tucumcari, the high school I was at, here's just some general information. Here's the state of New Mexico. Tucumcari is located in Quay County, which is this little red area. And the actual town of Tucumcari is kind of in this upper northwest corner up here, kind of. And here's a Google shot of it. You can see it's not a very big town. It has an interstate going through it, and those are basically city blocks, and that's the entire town there. Some basic facts to get an idea about the school itself. I don't know if you're familiar, but one of the demographics they look at always for education is the graduation rate and the number of students you have that are in the free and reduced lunch program, because that's a pretty good indication of the economic status of the students there. So you can see that there is a significant issue, 79% graduation rate, and they qualify for the 100% free and reduced lunch. And basically, that's not necessarily 100% of them qualifying for that. Is basically once they get to a certain percentage, like I think it's like 85, they're like, okay, we're not going to have you count those small details. We'll just count the whole school as 100% free and reduced lunch. So that's a little bit about Tucumcari. And then special thanks to Tommy Evans, who allowed me to work with his students. I just wanted to point that out. A lot of teachers are reluctant to give up some of their class time with students, but Tommy also likes these project-based learning programs and ideas, and so he was willing to do that. So here is some of the submissions, and this is what they actually turned in. So the other thing I ended up doing with this project as well is I had the students, they had the option of following the example in the book, or they could so they could do a haiku, or they could kind of write a little reflective piece about the photo or what was making them think about this. So this is Soraya's, and you can see what she wrote here. The other thing is I had these, when the students submitted these photos to me, there is another competition that's the Future Voices of New Mexico competition, and is ran out of the Lenzik Performing Arts Center there in Santa Fe. And they have a monthly contest, and students can submit up to 2 photos. And if theirs is selected as the monthly winner, they end up winning something. So this was Soraya's, but I had the student enter. And again, this wasn't taken recently, but I was talking about symmetry. So this student did find an older photograph she liked that she had taken with her cat. And this was her haiku that she wrote with this, and she submitted it to the Future Voices of New Mexico competition. And I found out on Monday she was selected as this month's the month of January's winner. So she will be receiving $50, which made her very excited. And I do think including the haiku with her submission is what sold it. So thank you very much for that. So again, you can see the haiku there. and again, some of them weren't necessarily seasons. This was kind of one of those things that ended up being interesting where here's Angela. She followed a haiku pattern here, but and we talked about the rules of third. So this was her car and her dad's truck, and what it made her think of. So again, not exactly what your book is about, but I think it inspires some creativity and some innovation and self-reflection and those kinds of things that I think is one of the purposes of art. So here is hers. Here is another student, again with a haiku, and this was in his on his property near where he lives. And again, I liked the way it stirred some of these kids to actually attempt to do something they hadn't done before. When I talked to all the students, there was 2 of them that knew about haikus, but they had never written. So this was a totally new experience for several of these students. So, you know, their first go at this kind of poetry was, I think, worth the endeavor. So, and then here's a picture so I had him, he send me 2 pictures, 2 photos. So this was his second one there. And again, near his property there. So I think that was a fabulous one. And then again, they had the option of not writing a haiku. They could just kind of write a little paragraph or a sentence or 2 about what they were thinking about or what the photo was meant to them as they were doing this. So here is Seth's picture and his little comment when he submitted me the photo to me. And here's his second photo that he did. This is on the school grounds there. And again, we talked about looking at things in super detail, the big picture of things. And he came back and actually mentioned some things about the tumbleweed here, which he talked about with season stuff. But that was and it was just a quick little 2 or 3 sentences thing. But he's like, I never really looked at one that close for whatever reason. So I thought that was kind of interesting. This was one of the first ones, and I really liked it because it mimicked the plate very well. And then here's Brittany with 1 T, because there's another Brittany with 2 T's, different last names. But when I saw this photo, I was really, I saw her going the extra distance with the photo here. I thought that was pretty clever. And again, what she wrote about the photo herself, I just copied and pasted these directly from the emails that they sent. This was the one I was thinking was going to win the Future Voices of New Mexico competition because I thought it was pretty stunning. And again, their first go at doing this kind of stuff. And then the last one here is from David, and he actually did 2 photos and 2 haikus, and he worked on the haikus. He'd never done one before. It took a little while to work through the first ones, and he actually came to me when I was at lunch, and anytime he had a class that he could get out of to do this, and it wasn't getting out of it to do it, just to hang out. I mean, he was like going through the whole process. It was very interesting to see him engaged. And Tommy, his teacher, Tommy Evans, said, you know, this is the most I've seen him fired up about something like this ever. He's had him for a couple of years as a student. And I do like the connection here that he did, because when he took the photo and there's the evergreen tree covered up by the concrete, and we had this whole discussion over a 2-day period about nature and, you know, man versus nature and those kinds of things, and the gray of concrete and the gray of the sky. And so out of all of them, and again, this is a photo for symmetry as well, because that was one of the assignments. But I think he did a really good job, and it really sparked his interest in photography and nature and haikus. And so again, I think a very worthwhile project, and I definitely think you definitely inspired several kids already out of the get-go with just the first batch I dealt with. So thank you very much.
So this is one of the moments I've been waiting for. If you're willing to do it, Joanna or Betsy, what are your reactions to seeing this work by students in New Mexico who were inspired by your book, thanks to Creighton spending a week with them, totally unscheduled, totally unplanned? What are your reactions to what you've seen?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe how the pictures are very diverse. The obviously the choices that have been made. I love the ones that show man-made as well as nature, because that's something that works in Japan, is that they don't really see the difference between the two things. A lot of people will say, get rid of the ugly concrete thing, but the Japanese don't see that there is a difference between the concrete thing and the tree, because they're both made by something. They both have personality, they have souls, and you're seeing that in those pictures that have the man-made. We're not separate. The man-made isn't separate from the nature. We're all living together and existing. And to see the ones that have the two things working together with the trucks and they're just fantastic. The haiku are fantastic. Wonderful.
Well, I'm glad that Creighton students who did this will get to hear and see your reaction to it. Betsy, do you have something to add to it? What did you think or feel?
Well, I just want to say that I feel so excited and honored that this book has become a seed, as you said, for the students. And I just want to thank both Renee, Beth, and Creighton for what you've said. And Creighton, I loved how you didn't confine the students too much to like mimicking what we were doing, but allowed them to sort of take it where they would. And that last image with David Olguin, I think his name was, when you said he was more engaged than he's been in years, I don't need to hear anything else. That's just the best. That's made my day, and then some. So I never expected that it could be used in that way. And I know, in high school or it's a hard time for students. So to have something that they can feel enthusiastic about is amazing, I think. So thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Betsy. And now you know what I had in my mind when I first said, I'm going to get back to you about this book. What was it? The Dixon Studio Tour, I think it was, in early November when Joey and I came up there. And that was when I got one of your little plates for her that she really wanted. But then I got that book and she was surprised because she was going to buy the book for me, but I bought it for us. And I'll tell you that during the pandemic, when I recently had COVID and I couldn't work and I couldn't think and I couldn't write, that book sitting on my coffee table, when I was sitting there and I didn't know what to do, I just opened the book and let it wash over me. And it gave me such comfort and such healing that it really helped me get through that difficult time, which also the rest of my team picked up the slack when I couldn't do anything. They were doing all the work for almost a month. And so I think there's a lot of good juju in this book, to use a musician's term, that is going on. Now, one of the people I know who has had the deepest and longest success at opening opportunities for what we would consider to be marginalized students. In New Mexico, we talk about Los Alamos and they've got the greatest kids and they always do everything. And the Supercomputing Challenge started in Los Alamos. But over the 30-something years that the Supercomputing Challenge has been doing it, Celia has seen time and time again how the kids who never get a shot very often can not only compete, but sometimes even beat the kids who have all of the opportunity. Celia fell in love with this book too. She got to be at the Rift Gallery one day when you weren't there, Betsy. So we stopped there. So Celia has seen your place and she has seen the book. Celia, what do you have to add to the conversation right now in terms of what you've seen with students and what you've seen with projects and just what's your reaction right now?
First of all, I want to thank the 5 of you. This has been a wonderful, almost 45 minutes. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sitting in a 7,000 feet elevation with sunshine and snow, and the trees look like diamonds, and I want to go out and take a picture. And that's wonderful, because I'm not a visual person, but I'm going to go try this project. I'm in love. My passion in education is problem-based learning or project-based learning, and I just think this shows is a wonderful project. I always talk about 5 C's with the supercomputing challenge, and one of them is coding, and that doesn't necessarily fit this project. But I just love the communication and the collaboration and the critical thinking and the creativity. I was just thinking I want to share it with my daughter, who's a principal and works with marginalized prisoners and felons and people like that, because I think she would really enjoy using it with her students. Bravo, Creighton. I just loved your students' pictures. Renee, I love to listen to you talk. Bertie, thank you for doing this. And you two women authors, keep going.
Let's show you how to keep going, because in the final minutes here, before Betsy has to go, I want to show people what the follow-up would look like. So in order to do this project, there is a template in Google Slides, and you'll be able to get all of this stuff through the community of practice. So the first thing is, if you want to do this project, sign up for the next one. That's how we'll get your email, and we will be sending out this link on our website and other places so people can join. But we wanted to make it as simple as could be. So on the first slide, you just say which micro season you're going to do. Now, I knew that I had to prepare this ahead of time. So last week, I took some photos outdoors. I would suggest that in the notes, you say who you are, where you're from, and when you took the pictures. I said I took these at 5 o'clock on Monday in order to be ready for today. So when I went outside, I saw this. Well, you know, I won't do it as a slideshow for right now, but I saw this thing and I wrote these words to it. And this was the close-up of what had really grabbed me, was this shadow here and the melting snow, you know, in the light, and the light on the weeds. And then I saw another weed that really got me, and this made me think of the 7 sisters. So I wrote that, and I wrote the explanation of what I had here. But that's not the micro season day we're talking about. So what I'm saying is, when people put this in, they put this in ahead of time, but because they're doing it online, I just took this picture last night, because this is what our February 4th actually looked like. It didn't actually look like this, but it looked like this. And this was my impression of, yeah, you know, we didn't get the spring breezes melting the ice. We got -2 and snow. But the idea is as simple as somebody would go in here, save it as their own, post their own back up there, and then we will share that in the community of practice. And what they could do, if they felt like it, is they could just record their slideshow using Flipgrid or using some other techniques, and then they can just go through, and if they wish to, they could narrate what their story was about it. But it would really take less than a minute to make that recording. It took me less than an hour to put this all together, and we're going to be doing this every 5 days between now and April 30th, which is the 18th micro season. And we hope that people will come in and enjoy it and find it fun. As I mentioned, for general interest, anybody can do this project, or they can just come and watch. And in the community of practice, we want them to give and receive feedback. If they want to go to the next level, that's where they would be signing up to present their work, just as Creighton shared the work of his students today. If it wasn't a snow day in Tucumcari, we would have loved to have had the students on explaining their work, but it's not bad for the teacher to explain the work either, if that's necessary. And we're going to be running this for the entire duration of the spring part of that book. So if someone says they want to join the project, they're going to give us their email address. They're also going to give us our physical address so we can mail them a copy of the book, and they'll be able to have that as they work. So that's all I had for today. I think you have exceeded my wildest expectations. Would you like to give us a wrap-up thought, Renee Beth, of what's the takeaway and what should people in the community of practice be thinking about as they look at this and other types of projects?
Okay, well, what's so beautiful about it is that nature's at the center of it. We're trying to solve a connectivity issue in New Mexico, and we're trying to connect it to relationships. And the one big thing is families learning together. So that's the other piece that we're going to see in the community of practice. It's going to be like grandparents and parents and youth, taking pictures and being aware of maybe the things that, we just walk by every day. It's like suddenly become present to what's emerging, and then capturing that and sharing the story. And then having the different, we'll have these pods where there'll be maybe a teacher, a student, a parent, or a grandparent, or it could be groups of grandparents. All we know is that we create this book, this work, what you're created and what Creighton has brought forward. And of course, what Celia has said, it's these ways in which we listen, communicate, and collaborate. And suddenly there's more hope, more joy, more possibility. And the youth get into that self-directed driver's seat that Creighton and Celia have been talking about their whole life. Like once they get it, I love that story, Creighton, about the young man who has not been lit up and suddenly he is. He may have found something that's unfolding for him. And then he has a community that gets to witness him. It's almost like, when we do the rites of passage, it's like we get to witness each other with nature at the center. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. And I hope we can get back together and share more with you all. And thank you for being the catalyst, Betsy. And thank you for, Joanna, there's something about, one of the key things is about local and global connections. So you're modeling for us, this idea that we're all on this planet together, and we're find people who care about the same thing we do. We've got that happening in the community of practice. And Bertie, thank you for your wisdom of seeing the project in the perfect time. And I'm just curious, spring doesn't really happen until what, March?
By the calendar, by the calendar, it'd be March 22nd or something.
Okay, like so I'm just wondering if the Microseasons, has an early add-on, like maybe if we're witnessing spring will come sooner. But the other day it was Groundhog Day, and I don't know if the Ponchihani Phil or whatever his name is saw a shadow or not. Are we gonna have an early spring? That's how I'd like to leave the question. I'd like to leave the question with you, Betsy. What do you think? We're gonna have an early spring, or what do you think?
No idea.
Well, all I know is I don't know what it's doing outside, but inside it's springtime in my heart. I'm feeling things warm and gentle and growing, and I'm feeling safe and supported, largely because I don't have to do this by myself. None of us have to do this by ourselves. We can find ways to communicate, collaborate, share, and grow to the time we have available. And it doesn't all have to be real time like we're doing now. It can also be any time, as you have proven so well to us by showing us what's possible when two people have an idea and they work on it. I'm so grateful to Betsy and Joanna for launching us today. People will be able to see the beginning parts of this video, every one of the 18 things. So they'll be hearing and seeing what you said. And this will all be available in the archives, and it will all be going on the data casting receivers. So our families have something to look forward to when they get those. Again, thank you for helping make this dream come true. And we're going to watch it grow together. So be safe, be well, and know that you're in our hearts all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.